Tekken 4 is known for its mature tone. A more serious take on storytelling, dark and sometimes straight-up sinister visuals, and of course the highly dramatic OST. In my last video, I took a deep dive into the music of Tekken 4, analyzing each of its tracks while also offering my personal opinion along the way. There was, however, one aspect that I had missed. The music changes dynamically mid-fight. Since a lot of you have pointed this out, today I want to take a closer look at how this works and whether that changes my personal opinion on some of these tracks. Let's take a listen. Background music, or BGM for short, has always been a very important part of any video game experience. It helps the player to immerse themselves, it aids in creating emotionally impactful moments, and sometimes it's just there to stay a while and listen. In fighting games, it feels like the music has an especially high priority, since there is usually very little to no dialogue, and the only other sounds you'll typically hear are when the characters deliver powerful blows or when they grunt after receiving them. The music also needs to be fast-paced to match the adrenaline-inducing fighting, and that's certainly not an easy task. The introduction of dynamic or adaptive music, so music that changes when specific gameplay moments occur, further builds this relationship between playing and listening. The introduction of such features to fighting games occurred way before Tekken 4. The earliest example I could find is the legendary Street Fighter II from 1991, which would change the soundtrack whenever a character's health would drop to a dangerously low point, emphasizing the most critical moment of the fight. Other franchises would soon jump onto this concept, like Samurai Showdown in 1993 or Killer Instinct in 1994. For some reason, Tekken took a bit longer. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the first few Tekken games did not feature any adaptive elements in the music at all. Tekken 4 was the first entry that would experiment with this concept in a very specific way. A lot of this game's tunes feature multiple sections that are only distinguished by varying degrees of intensity. Oftentimes, the same section is repeated, but with more instruments or layers, making the sound denser and more impactful. The game then uses these tenser sections for round transitions to, again, emphasize an important moment in a fight. A prime example of that is Authentic Sky, which plays when you fight in the building stage. The track's arrangement is rather thin in the beginning, which I previously described as very cozy but lacking a bit in the intensity department, especially from the drums that join in way later. However, the point at which the drums join in-game is whenever the first round ends and the first final blow is dealt, which does make for a satisfying musical highlight. From that point on, the drums remain and add another layer to the already familiar sound, emphasizing the rising tension of the fight. Certainly a nice use of these musical segments, and it also dismantles pretty much the only criticism Certainly a nice use of these musical segments, and it basically dismantles the only criticism I had for this track, at least partially. On the beach stage, you listen to the track Kitsch, which is one of the more recognizable tunes from this game, mostly known for this intro melody. The same melody is used repeatedly during the round transition section, and it seems to me that this composition must have been written with this intention in mind. It fits too well to be a coincidence, although I could be wrong, of course. Unfortunately, Kitsch is also a track that, in my opinion, suffers from this adaptive feature, depending on how many rounds you manage to play on it. One of the coolest parts of this track is this very prominent synth melody with a strong vibrato. But according to what I could find online, this part of the track only ever plays once you reach round 3. meaning that if you finish the fight beforehand, you straight up can't hear it. Now, you might say that this is an obvious thing in most fighting games. The tunes need to be longer than the total possible playtime, so there will always be sections and parts that you can't hear if you end the fight quickly. And while that is certainly true, I still find it a bit disappointing that some tracks have their most hype moments at such a late point. Sure, if you watch a tournament, an important match goes to the final round, and then you hear your favorite section for the first time in the whole tournament, it would be a great climactic moment. But let's be real, back then when you played Tekken 4 casually at home, you would probably beat every single opponent with ease, or you'd likely set the round count to 1, so you might never actually hear these amazing parts. Listen to this part of Bit Crusher, for example. Here the keyboard plays a solo that starts off with a variation of the main theme and then develops into some busy runs and a climactic finish. Sounds freaking amazing. But again, this part seems to be reserved for third rounds on the Shinjuku stage, so I suppose there must have been thousands of Tekken players who were never blessed by this magnificent keyboard solo. Truly a shame. Truth be told, I don't know how this quote-unquote problem could be solved, because Tekken 4's approach at least gives you specific opportunities to hear these segments without having to fully deplete the timer to try and reach it in time. But I still feel like there must be a better way to do this. Another thing that feels disappointing is the way that the music transitions between these predetermined sections. In most cases I heard, it abruptly shifts from one segment to the other without any crossfade and without any attempt to keep the meter intact, so to speak. You lose. It just swiftly cuts to the specific part, and if you're lucky, it might line up well, but in most cases I heard, it sounds like the music stumbles ungracefully and tries to get up immediately before anyone can notice. But I do notice, and I bet you do too. This is likely the result of limited possibilities back in the early 2000s, or due to time constraints and a tight development schedule, but it's still something I wish was smoother. Overall, I think this feature does a good job of highlighting the immense variety of Tekken 4's OST, and many tracks benefit from these transitional or round-ending sections. Bit Crusher is actually one of them. This part where the track slowly breaks down from the loud brass section all the way to only the kick drum works really well in this context. You win. Round 2. Fight. But to get back to the initial question, I don't feel like my opinion on any of these tracks has changed at all. Authentic Sky, Kitsch, and Bit Crusher are all among the stronger tunes in this game, and I really enjoy each one of them, whether that be in-game or as a standalone song. The tunes I don't really enjoy, like Mob or Jim, also can't possibly convince me with time transitions, since the reason I dislike them is not due to their structure, but their overall sound design. I'm really interested in how this will further develop in future Tekken iterations, since I know that some of the late entries play around even more with this idea of adaptive background music. I'll make sure to comment on it in my upcoming Tekken 5 OST analysis. Folks, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like on it. It helps me out much more than you can possibly imagine. If you want to see more OST analyses and Tekken music talk, make sure to also subscribe to the channel and ring the bell so you don't miss my next upload. Until then, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.